Hello, my name is Clove Galilee with Santa Monica Cultural Affairs and the Annenberg Community Beach House. This evening, we are proud to present Work, Work, Balance, a virtual event that has been a bustling public destination with year-round programs. We offer an array of things to do in arts and culture and recreation, and as a place to host meetings, events, or even shoot a feature film. We invite you to find out more about the Annenberg Community Beach House and its history at annenbergbeachhouse.com. Please join us in person for our next cultural event at the Annenberg Community Beach House, Journey into the Labyrinth, in November. Thank you so much for joining us, and please enjoy the reading.
Hello from Red Hen Press and the Annenberg Community Beach House. We're excited to be back to our partnership series with the Annenberg and Santa Monica Cultural Affairs for another fantastic virtual event. Tonight, we'll be exploring how writers with full-time, non-literary jobs were able to write and promote their books. Before we begin, we wanted to take this time to acknowledge that the land I am broadcasting from is the occupied and seized territory of the Gabrielino, Tonga, and Kizh people, and the land that the Annenberg Community Beach House is on belonged to those tribes and the Chumash as well. We'll start tonight's event off with some readings from each of our amazing authors so you can get a taste of their talent. Mia Hebner, we're going to start with you.
Thank you, Toby. Just thank you for the opportunity to basically join the conversation. So I'm going to read from my novel, Undernishigak Bluff. Basically, it's set in Southwest Alaska in a village in the 1950s. And the two main characters, Ellen is the child, and then Ann Girl is her mom. So it's just kind of set around there. With the arrival of spring, the earth tilted toward the warmth of the sun, and the days grew long, and breakup began. Icy chunks from the inland river sailed to sea, taking the same route around the Nushigak Peninsula that the Russian fur traders took hundreds of years ago. No sooner had the ice receded than the cannery men, imported from the Philippines and China, arrived with their duffel bags. Once the store opened, men from the village began to sit on its porch or at the dock, hoping to be taken on as a fishing partner. There was talk among the villages in the area that the fishermen might be able to use motorized boats that summer, instead of the heavy sailboats. But all the surrounding canneries were protesting against it. At the time, only the canneries were allowed to have power boats, so they could tow sailboats back and forth when it came to time to fish. They said it would be unfair to the fishermen who couldn't afford a motor. Some fishermen agreed, but most wished they could just set sail. Whenever she could, Ellen watched the cannery come to life. Nearly every high tide, a new barge would arrive with more supplies for the cannery. Lumber, boxes of food, paint, hammers, and nets, dories with green trim. And before the barge would leave the bay, hammers began pounding, and the frames of new sheds and warehouses began springing up on the spit, until it seemed as if the cannery was working its way to the bluff. Ellen sat at the bottom of the step of the front porch, not paying attention to the breeze blowing tantrums around her face, her eyes fixed on the commotion at the end of the spit. With her mother's voice like a song in her ear, Ellen made up stories about the men who looked much like the villagers. Many times she overheard her mother and her other grown-ups say that these men were Filipinos or Chinamen, and she wondered if they felt lonely being so far from home. She watched the wiry one's cat walk up and down the boats, and she imagined they were born on boats way past Cape Constantine. She had never been there, but she heard that the waves rolled higher than the fish racks, and one had to be faster than the swells to survive. Eliak! There you sit. Ann Girl came up behind her with heavy steps. She carried a basketful of wet clothes. Why you always look that way? Ann Girl peered over the railing and saw men walk from one building to another. She spotted the cannery superintendent with his black cap and button-down shirt, the chief of those people who feasted briefly on the Nushigak waters, but never stayed long enough to allow their feet settle in the mud. He walked stiffly with his shoulders thrown back, and Ann Girl felt in her stomach that it would be a good year for the cannery. These clothes need to be hung, Ann Girl set the basket down. A few days ago, Ann Girl had found herself face to face with Nora, the missionary's wife, who hinted that Ellen would be more than welcome to join the Bible group. At the time, Ann Girl let that light-footed woman know that Ellen had much work to do that summer, too much for Bible time. Ann Girl pinched Ellen's arms, feeling for muscle. There was talk among the villagers that the salmon season was going to be a good one. She heard Gil Sam say that he caught a big king and almost pulled him overboard. Even if Gil likes to tell stories, she felt it in her bones. It was going to be a good season. They were extending the length of the spit with fractured rock on the bluff side to support new buildings. There was word that they were making room for a men's steam bath and a clinic. The men were going to have a maqay. Finally. Akaka, Ellen yelped. Stop that. You're strong enough. This year you're fishing with me. We've got to put up lots of fish, lots of smoked fish. In the skiff, too? I want to go in the skiff this year. Ann Girl sized her daughter up. The crease in the middle of her forehead deepened so the river could run down between her eyes. The girl was too clumsy yet, she thought. Just a day, Ellen had nearly caught the house on fire when she left the broom leaning on the stove. If Ann Girl hadn't been there to take it off, who knows how long it would have taken for the house to burn. And John, her father, was always flying the new route this summer, so someone had to watch her. And Ann Girl would die a slow, cold death before she would let Nora fill Ellen up with silly stories. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mia, for reading from Undernishigak Bluff. I appreciate it. Love that book. I actually almost burned my house down yesterday in a very similar way, so glad that didn't happen for me either. All right, next up, we're going to be hearing from Yu-Han Chao, reading from Sex and Taipei City. Yu-Han, please take it away.
Hello, thank you so much for everybody at Red Hen and Annenberg for making this possible, and it's a great pleasure to read with our other authors as well. So I'm going to start with a short poem that's a newer poem, and then I will finish with an excerpt from a short story from my book, Sex and Taipei City, that's out with Red Hen Press. Okay. So the poem is called Death Valley. And just to do a disclaimer, I am an ICU nurse, and I wrote this before vaccinations came out, so it's a little bit more bleak than it really is because, you know, vaccination changes the game a little bit at least. Okay. All right, so this is called Death Valley. 1. Air. From first cry of separation to last sigh between bagged breaths, after nasal cannula, high flow, BiPAP, proning, central lines, ventilation, chest tubes, trach, peg, double bags, we fear and we are alone, and those not alone somehow punished with infection. Desert wasteland with sunburst Joshua trees, weeds that tumble, mountains studded with jeweled brush, natural bridge via unreal road, too far gone to turn back, so many passed under. But why? There are things other than COVID, aren't there? Or has it taken all the hosts, carriers, swabs, masks, PPE, body bags, morgue space, happiness? 2. Salt. What'd you have children for if they send you to a sniff? No visitors. Maybe no visitors ever again. But Marla Grayson got you. She got you good. Tyrion Lannister, not your son. The people bad, water bad, crusted with mineral snow, salted heart with non-viable defect, canyons, gold, mountains, pastel. Avoid the precipice and strong winds. The sun sets. Please turn back before it's too late and too dark. If you fall and cannot get up, no one will find you until sunrise. You reach out your hand and do not see 5 fingers. How many fingers now? How about now? Do you feel this? Who knew the heart of darkness would be this pretty and this cold? What are the risks, benefits, and alternatives? Wind, water, solar, cold water, no electricity except human power. 3. Dunes. In the desert, it's hot or cold, drenched in sweat under gown, or frigid in morgue. Too much or too little, too late. A sandstorm makes it easy to cry, difficult to open one's eyes. bandana, cloth, surgical, KN95, turtle duck, BYD, 1870, top, bottom, shield, bonnet, booties, first wave, second spike, current surge. CDC warns new variants may wipe out our recent progress. What does the CDC know about our recent progress? Just went down on PEEP and fraction of inspired oxygen. Undone so much, so many. Sticks and stones won't break my bones, but proning and repositioning might. Woman, man. Who is that third holding a device? The shadow of darkness on Zoom or FaceTime with family. 4. Light. Minuscule crescent moon in broad daylight, swelled to huge and full. Against fruitless pears, the oxymoron tree. Between home and the hospital, behind turbines, setting, confused. Night sky planisphere of guilt catching dreams and dippers. For we are all but looking for the way home. Is home other people? Or was that hell? Between darkness and light, medjool dates, wasteland to hope, to dust, funeral home, lizard under pandemic treehouse, burial of which symbolic of countless childhoods buried under pale sand, the hourglass only half full. It's running out. Okay, this is the beginning of a story that's set in Taipei, Taiwan, and it's from my book Sex and Taipei City that was published by Red Hen Press. This one's called Writing on the Basement Wall. There is a Chinese superstition that those who commit suicide wearing red clothes will become powerful, vengeful ghosts. They will come back and seek retribution for the injury done to them while they are still alive. Cynthia woke up late. Fortunately, Hanling Vocational College enforced a strict uniform code so that she did not have to rummage through her closet looking for a cute outfit. She did, however, have to search for a pair of long, white socks, since short, calf-exposing ones were considered indecent by the president, Mrs. Lin. The radio blasted staticky news on ICRT, the only English radio station based in Taipei. The good thing about listening to the station, although Cynthia's listening comprehension only allowed her to pick up phrases here and there, was that it broadcast strictly international or political news. No horrible Taiwanese society news about the man who stabbed his ex-girlfriend last night, or the love suicide of Taipei's premier hypnotist's daughter. No acid poured on anyone's face, no stalkers, kidnappers, gangsters, sex crimes. Finally dressed and ready for school, Cynthia rushed out of the apartment. When she closed the inside door, she noticed a piece of paper taped to the exterior door. She closed both doors and ripped off the piece of paper. Dear tenant, a message in red mentioning your name was found scribbled on the basement wall. As much as we regret this, we must ask you to take full responsibility for cleaning the writing on the wall as soon as possible, as it must be left by an acquaintance of yours. Sincerely, the building manager, number 3, Xingyi Street. Cynthia crumpled the note and avoided eye contact with the building manager at his desk as she walked hastily out of the front entrance of her ugly tile building. At the bus stop, she tossed the paper ball, now a tight, warm wad, into a wastebasket. That's it. Thank you.
Yu-Han, thank you. My goodness, the excerpt, but that poem was powerful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right. Next, we'll be hearing from Joan Nockels Wilson from the Book of Timothy, The Devil, My Brother, and Me. Joan, take it away.
Thank you, Toby, and thank you, Red Hen, Annenberg, and Santa Monica, and all you wonderful writers. A little bit to know, I am an attorney, a former prosecutor, and this memoir is about my travels to Rome to attempt to get a confession out of the priest who abused my brother about 30 years after his crimes. This selection is right before I'm meeting the priest who I've tricked into meeting me with false personas. You need a bear stick. What, honey? A bear stick, Abby had said while I was packing my bag. She wore a Rapunzel dress and her Sleeping Beauty crown. In her hand, she held out one of the sticks from the pile we kept by the front door. No sticks in the house had been our command to Cletus, our dog, but he couldn't help but bring them as close as possible to the interior. He dropped them in place right as the front door opened. A what? I was still confused and couldn't close the bag zipper no matter how hard I tried. It was time to remove a few more books. A bear stick for the bad man. I turned to look at her. She looked as if she gave me the most obvious of answers. I tousled her hair. Why do you think I need that, sweetie? You told me the bad man had claws like a bear. That's how he ripped into Uncle Tim. He ripped open his tummy, right? That's what you said yesterday. I shook. Would I always be the mother who said too much? Yes, sweetie, that's what I said. A bear stick is a pretty good idea, but I think we should leave this one here for you and Cleet. I bet I can find one in a park in Rome. Okay, but it has to be big. Ask, hope, and expect everything from God's infinite goodness, I tell myself while picking up my bear stick. Abby didn't know it, but she made it for me out of green pipe cleaner and orange tissue paper. I poked the stem of my fake poppy through the left side of the lapel of my sweater, just over my heart. It's 10 minutes to 3. Before I reach for my letter, kept within a clean white envelope with the words Father John Baptist Ormache written in perfect cursive upon it, I grab one more thing. It's a small metal object. I turn it over twice in the palm of my hand. Its weightlessness surprises me. It's even small enough to fit in the single zippered pocket in the back of my bike shorts under my dress, right at the base of my spine. Once zipped in, I pat it twice and walk out the door. I would be lying to you if I told you I didn't visualize the Amanda Knox headline in the next day's La Repubblica. What would be my nickname? Although a Nockels at 47, Foxy Noxy certainly didn't fit. Perhaps La Procuratore for prosecutor or La Sorella for sister. No, I thought something more to the point would have been best. Once translated, it would have read, American lawyer avenges her brother, hunts down and kills predator priest. You see, despite my desired intention to do no harm and to make it home safely to Abby, I very much wanted that headline. I even thought, if murder is something I could do, with you as my judges, I could talk my way out of any potential punishment. Here is how I might say it. There is the occasion, no invoking the fifth after a decade, hell, 30 years of silence, that homicide is justified. Purposely use that innocuous term, homicide, not murder, assassination, gutting, slaying, your regular burning at the stake. That breathing should simply cease when death is no longer deserved. As to the motives for my action, they're easy enough to understand. The priest raped my brother. Sure, we could quibble about the actual physical act, but there is no doubt that bastard, that bad bear, as my daughter would call him, clawed into Tim what the professionals call the lifelong scars of childhood sexual abuse. Emphasize this point. The lifelong scars. No one gets over it. Hell, even look at Oprah, who said long ago she forgave, who said forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could be any different. The fact that she spends her entire life seeking approval and love from every American, this shows she's damaged goods. This shows she didn't get over it. Neither did Tim. And even though I am no one's direct victim, neither did I. Will you forgive my choice? Should you? Would you yourself have done any differently? What happened next occurred more quickly than my earlier timidity exhibited. I commanded my right leg into action just as surely as I reached my left hand toward the object I had zipped into my back pocket. I willed it to be my guidance and took sustenance from its presence and through the gate all the way through the gate to number 13 and along every step up that new stairway. Step 1, sunglasses still on, I lowered my gaze, wondering what remote camera might signal my identity before I wanted to be realized. I was right to do so. Later, he'll tell me that my gait walking up those long stairs seemed familiar and that my height caused him to wonder if he knew me. Step 2, you must know I was frightened, but by then I had no choice. Steps 3 and 4, the stairs were short in width and moved so quickly. Though I could physically turn around, I was that fireman marching into the basement I had, you see, committed. Steps 5 and 6, a silent one-word prayer came to mind. It went like this: help. Steps 7 through 10, help, 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 help. At the black pavement that ramped its way up for 40 feet, almost all the way to the open door, I raised my chin and rolled my shoulders back. The air felt warm against my cheek. Letter in hand, I reached again for my back pocket and gripped what remained inside for as long as possible. One last rise, ladies and gentlemen. My friends, I call you that now. With one push against one half of a giant-sized door, I was inside. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Joan. Really riveting. Can't wait to hear more from you right after this. All right. Next up is Florencia Ramirez, author of Eat Less Water. Florencia, let's hear about how to eat less water.
Hi, thank you so much, Toby. Thank you to Red Hen and Annenberg, and just to the power and beauty and creativity of the writers who read before me. So thank you so much. I could really just sit here and listen to each of you continue reading. So I'm going to share with you all the stories that I heard, you can tell, come from the heart, come from love, come from passion, and come from tenacity of sticking with it. Right, to weave a story takes a long time and a lot of effort. So I wrote this book. It's called Eat Less Water, and it was really it took me 7 years to write, traveling around the country to visit with farmers, to understand one simple question, or to answer what began as a simple question, which is, can I, as one eater, make an impact on water systems around the world? Since the prediction is that by 2030, half the world population will not have enough fresh water. So I began this journey, and it's in this book. But many times when I speak to audiences, the question is always, why water? Why are you interested in this topic? So the book begins with a very short prologue, which tells a story that my father told to me, which is really the impetus of getting me ready to write this story. It's called Drop of Water. Drops of water saved my father's life. In the sweltering days following my father's birth, he just lay there. He did not cry. He refused milk. On the 4th day, my grandmother sent her daughter to borrow a small table from the neighbor's chicken coop. They would need something to put his tiny body on for the family viewing. My grandmother knew the signs of a dying baby. She'd given birth to 11 children. Only 7 survived. My father's sister came back with the table, but she refused to give up on her newborn brother. There had to be a doctor who would examine a baby for free. She ran through the heat of the Mexican summer to the town center and began knocking on doors. Someone knew a doctor, but he was busy with other patients. When he listened to her, this little girl desperate about her baby brother, the physician agreed to make a house call the next day. That night, a strong wind blew through the open window of the bedroom where my father lay. The gust startled my grandfather awake. He threw himself over my father's listless body to shield him against what my grandfather always described as an otherworldly chill. A cold hand pressed down on his back. He believed it was the hand of La Muerte, death. The cold wind retreated as suddenly as it arrived. My father was still alive, just barely. The doctor arrived the next morning. After a quick examination, he knew what was wrong. He prescribed gotitas de agua, drops of water on the baby's lips. Within days, my father's condition slowly improved. He suffered from dehydration. His sister, my tia Antonia, returned the table to the neighbors, back to the chicken coop where it belonged. When I told this story to my friends at school, I always made sure to emphasize the part about death paying a visit only to leave empty-handed. Did you know 1 drop of water holds all the fresh water in the world? A retired park ranger asked me at my booth where I sold water conservation products during an Earth Day event. How so? If we poured all the water on our planet, both salt and fresh water, in a gallon bucket, the proportion of water available to shower, water our lawns, drink, and grow food is 1 single drop. We live on a water planet. The Earth is 2/3 water, and 97.5% of that is salt water. Of the 2.5% fresh water, 69.5% of that is frozen, another 30.1% hides in deep aquifers, the remaining 0.4%, a drop in a bucket, sustains all the life on this planet. Now, when I tell my father's story to my own children, I emphasize the power of a single drop of water. So I'll end there.
All right, thank you. All right, now we're all gonna, there we go. Thank you so much, Florencia. I love the whole concept we need less water. And I think reading that book has changed my life and how I eat and how I buy and the things that I cook. So just to start us all off here, first of all, can each of you tell us just a little bit about your unique professions including or out, but outside of being an author? Let's see. Yu-Han, would you like to start?
Sure. So right now I'm an ICU nurse, but I started out teaching and being a writer back in the day. But what happened was my mom got sick, and we ended up taking her home on the home hospice. And what I noticed was that in the ICU, as well as when we took her home on home hospice, the nurses were the ones who really made a difference in the patient and the patient's family's lives. Like, the doctors do an important thing as well, but nurses are there for the entire shift and they can really change the experience. So that's what changed my mind to become a nurse. And also just, watching my mom pass away and all of that, it was just a really life-changing experience. It was almost like a midlife crisis because it was such an honor to be there first of all. And that's how I feel every day in the ICU, that, it's a real honor to be there in someone's most difficult times, final days when they're, on a ventilator and the family is trying to say goodbye. And especially now with COVID, when we can't really have visitors or we have very restricted visiting policy, it's just us, the nurses. There's nobody else. We can put them on a phone, speakerphone, we can do an iPad, but we're the only ones whose human presence is there to hold their hand and all of that. So every day it's a real honor to be in that situation. And it kind of brings me back to being with my mom in her final days as well. So, it's kind of therapeutic for me to kind of almost get that back a little bit, because at the time it seemed like a really difficult period watching my mom die, but I kind of get a little bit of that back. And I always feel like, oh, I could have done more. And right now I feel like I am doing more, but for other people's moms or dads or grandmas or children even. So it feels like I'm still able to do something more, even though my mom has passed on. So I really love my job in that way. It is long hours, and I used to be day shift, now I'm night shift. So that's a unique challenge in itself. And COVID kind of complicates things, but it doesn't change the fact that I think it's a real honor to, be in this profession. And I really love it. And yeah.
Wow, thank you. My God, I didn't realize it was from a midlife from a midlife crisis, as you said too. What a switch! That is amazing. I'll bet you do a lot of teaching in your job too, though.
Yeah. I mean, patient education is a huge part of it because prevention is much better than treating. I mean, whether it's diabetes or heart-related conditions, if you can avoid coming to the hospital in the first place, then that's great. Because
right.
Once you're in a hospital, it's just damage control. We would like you to eat healthy and manage your chronic conditions and stay, mostly healthy and pain-free, and not let things get out of hand and keep going.
Yeah. Well, my goodness. Okay, sorry that anyone has to follow that up real fast. Anyone else like to? What do you think, Jen?
Well, since I'm next to Yu-Han, I've been a practicing attorney for 25 years. Yu-Han, hearing your story, I grew up a family of 7. My dad was a Chicago firefighter, hence the reference to firefighting in my story there. But we were debaters. So 7 of us at the table. I was more liberal, my dad more conservative, and every family dinner would end in an argument, and everybody left except Dad and I, and we always got to share the dessert. So I learned early on that it's okay to to argue and still like people. Over the course of my 25 years, I've done a lot, but my favorite thing is to be a public servant. I'm currently a senior assistant attorney general. I've been a prosecutor where I prosecuted felony domestic violence, and it's tied to animal cruelty. I prosecuted some horrific animal cruelty cases. And Google this if you're interested. The hoverboard dentist, probably the highlight of my career, was prosecuting a dentist who, 1, took out a tooth on a hoverboard, but 2, stole about $2.1 million from Medicaid by sedating 3 or 4 patients at the same time. And lucky he didn't kill someone. I currently have the best client in the world, the Marijuana Control Board. Marijuana is a new legalized industry here in Alaska. And the reason I love it is after practicing 25 years, you really need to stay engaged, and I get to learn something new every day. So that's my life, and a good part of my life, in addition to writing.
Whoa, that's cool. I'm gonna have to Google that hoverboard dentist.
Hoverboard dentist.
I think I saw that video when it first came out, and I was like, I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't recommend it. I can tell you though, I've gotten the best dental care since I've had that case, because the entire dental community talks about it, and they know who prosecutes and whatnot. So I'm in good shape. Thank you, Dr. Hawkinson.
Well.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh wow! All right.
I'm starting to look at your teeth now, Joe.
They're good, yeah. I won't be sedated though, I'll tell you that.
You do look really good.
All right, Florencia, how about you?
It's interesting because I think I have kind of like a pre-book story and a post-book like story in terms of career. Well, I have been very clear with the trajectory of my life that I want to be able to wake up every morning and decide what I want to do. So I've never been a good 9-to-5 person, but I did go to the University of Chicago, thought maybe I would be a professor, like maybe that would give me the flexibility that I craved, and met with a professor that said, not really, like that's not the reason to go through a PhD program is to try to get flexibility in your career. So I left there with a master's. Before I arrived there, I was already getting into activism work and was a school teacher, but kind of by accident, because it was during a time in California where they needed teachers that could speak any kind of Spanish and then just put us in the classroom. It was a weird time. I was just out of college, but so I ended up going and getting my master's in public policy, and then afterwards worked in Oxnard. I came back home and worked at the Oxnard College, and did some grant writing in addition to that, which I still do, dabble in grant writing. And when I started to write the book, I just wanted something that was flexible like that, but also brought in some income, but that I wasn't going to sign up for a job that was 9 to 5. Really, I mean, everything is actually 8 to 5, not even 9 to 5. So I decided to substitute teach at that point. I didn't want a full-time teaching job. So I was substitute teaching and then writing the book and raising my kids and traveling for the book as well. Since the book came out, I have, you know, that first year when the book comes out, you do presentations, you do your book, you know, your book tour, and everything is free. Like, you don't get paid for those things. But after that year, you can start charging. Like, at least that's my rule. You can start charging. So for the most part, so I do get paid for presentations, for workshops. In my book, there's a lot of, there's recipes. So that's been integrated into workshops I give to groups, like making tamales, but thinking about them through that lens of sustainability. I also have started, I work under the umbrella of the Encampment for Citizenship, which is a really beautiful 75-year-old organization that trains young people to be change agents. So they have, under that umbrella, I have what's called the Pesticide Free Soil Project. So I have it's a program where we're looking at public landscapes to reimagine public landscapes. So schools and parks, of how can you not just look at them as just a place to cut the lawn and put your fertilizer and your, you know, throw your water on it and your Roundup Ready, but rather looking at them as part of the solution to draw down carbon, to draw down water, to refill underground aquifers, and working with young people who are getting paid to do it. So I've been able to get grants from Patagonia and going for a grant with the EPA. So I've been, I guess, the merging of my skill of the activism and also of writing the book and knowing that these are areas that I'm really passionate about. And also my grant writing skills have certainly been very helpful for that. So that's been another stream of income. And, you know, it's interesting to think about it as just streams. You know, it's just these different financial streams that you just kind of put together for a river that can support you, and support you not just financially, but support spiritually, you know, support the joy of living. So I have that. I also am, you know, I'm also a super host on Airbnb. So that's actually quite a big stream for me. I have I live at the beach here in Oxnard, California, so I have a studio, and that was very intentional, wanting to make sure that we bought a house that had that opportunity, and that could evolve and change shape with the needs of our family, with growing kids, and in a place that's desirable. So we have that, and I've since, during the very beginning of COVID, my husband and I bought a house in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and so we have that on Airbnb when we're not there to use it, and eventually we'll be there half and half at the beach and it's in Santa Fe. But now that also when I you know, knew that eventually there would be an end to COVID, that the vision is to host writers' retreats as well at the house in Santa Fe. It's just such a beautiful place to create and to daydream, which is why I call it Casa de Sueños. So there's that, and then things that are developing are merchandising around Eat Less Water, so around the book. So that's something that's developing, working with with artisans and creating small scale kind of batches, like small batches of beautiful things for the kitchen that have good stories to tell, just like, you know, the food that we bring into our cupboards and our refrigerators, I talk about in the book, should also tell good stories. So there's that, and then a podcast is also in the works, which would just kind of integrate all of those parts, right? The activism that I'm doing, and of course, the merchandising is there, and the presentations, and just building that. But what really propels all of it is, one, it has to be fun. Otherwise, what's the point of it? Is, for me, that's, it has to be fun. And with purpose, everything to me is very purpose driven, and it feels good. It feels right. So then everything just flows from there.
Wow, that is amazing. There's a lot of different streams, a lot of different excitement, a lot of stuff on the horizon.
That's why
wow.
in the beginning, when you ask, what do you do? When people ask, what do you do? It's like, I don't know. How do I put that? What I do is just things I love. I guess that's how I answer.
You could just say a tagline, I'm starting a revolution of how to eat less water, right?
Well, when you were talking, I heard love. I heard love in everything you said. So that was interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I feel like you should just say I'm starting a movement. That's what I do. Yeah, you definitely are. Wow. All right, we got a lot of different professions here. My goodness, Mia, you have a very different profession. What about you?
Wow, I can't really follow that up. Let's see. I am a civil engineer during the day. I'm about almost 20 years. I design water and wastewater treatment systems in rural Alaska. I think we have about like maybe 13% of villages in Alaska that don't have water or any form of sanitation. And then, then you have like upgrades on existing. So it's part of like the Alaska Native Hospital. And so basically it's like a form of public health. And so, drinking good water and getting your waste away. So that's one. And the other one is I commercial fish salmon in the summers with my family. So both, now that I think about it, are driven family-wise. So I'm an engineer because my dad was an engineer and he died when I was 11, and it was kind of like the only way that I could kind of continue a relationship with him that I wasn't going to have otherwise. And then fishing, my grandmother, I guess, and then my grandmother, my mom, and then all of us kids, my siblings and I, and my cousins, we all fish. My brothers definitely get to, have the opportunity to fish more than I do because I can only take so much time off. But yeah, so it's just, that's like my mother's legacy. So I just kind of do them both. And then writing just, I guess, is, hell, I don't know how that fits in. It just does. So
I was going to say, how does that fit in? But it does, somehow it fits in.
Yeah, it just does. I don't know. I would think naturally. If you were to ask me, I'm just like, yeah, I'm just a daydreamer. I just pretend I don't know, I'm somewhere else.
Yeah. And then, do you ever write on the boat?
No, like it's cold. Basically, if I can summarize fishing, it's cold, wet, tired, and hungry. That's really what it is, and it's just labor intensive. So, yeah, there's none of that. I mean, maybe when I'm not, actually actively picking fish, but yeah. So that's about all I do.
Yeah, just that. Yeah, totally. That was a lot. All right. Wow. Okay, so then I guess with all of that, the biggest question that every writer is going to want to know, especially now, is how do you do it? How do you manage to juggle all of your workloads? A lot of people have more than one job, professional workloads with your personal life, and still find the energy and the creativity and the motivation to write and then publish and promote your work. It sounds like you're all very passionate about your work. I'm sure that helps, but like, how do you find that time?
Well, one thing I do is I call myself a writer and a lawyer, not a lawyer and a writer. And that's very key to me because if you looked at Joan at age 4, I knew early on that words were my language, my love language of communication. So with that as the passion, everything else needs to fit around it. And I call myself a weekend warrior and a 10 to 7 warrior. I've never been able to get up early and write. I've never been able to stay up late and write. I just, the day job of being a lawyer hurts my brain too much. But I work really well on lunch breaks or court breaks, and give me 10 to 7 on Saturday and Sunday. My husband has gone the extra mile. We have our 3-year-old in my book is now 13, and I honestly couldn't do it without him. But that said, the passion is still there, and you still got to sit down. And I know one question a lot of people get from other lawyers is how do you do it? And like I said, you have to call yourself a writer. You don't have to have anything published. If you write, you're a writer.
That is true. It's true. I love that.
Yeah.
I would say, Joan, too, that's a big leap for a lot of writers.
It's huge.
To actually call themselves a writer. And I don't know why that is. Well, I think it is for creatives, just whether it's artists, whatever kind of creative. It's like we don't think we really are that, right? Like, oh, I'm not really that good. I can't call myself a writer. I'm not really that good of an artist. I can't call, or a dancer, or anything in those creative arts. But I do think it's so important to call yourself, or to name it, and to wear it, and to be it, and embody it. And it comes, and it becomes more and more of who you are. But the first piece is to name it, even if you just, it doesn't matter what it is, because I do think that there's so much talent. There's so many talented writers, but the difference between a writer and an author is tenacity. And it's persistence. It is finishing the job, right?
Right.
Because so many people have ideas for books that they want to write. So many people daydream. I heard like Mia talk about daydreamer. There's so many people who want to write, but the difference between the writer and the author is you just have, well, one, you need to sit down and do it. Call yourself it, sit down and do it, but finish it, right? And stop making excuses, because I'm sure you all hear that too. That was, thankfully I got this message early on. For me, I'll just answer the question. For me is, I remember going to a conference where there was a bunch of teachers, like English teachers. And of course, a lot of English teachers love literature and all have this ambition or daydream to be authors, right? So
same with lawyers.
Yeah, same with lawyers. Actually, I'm married to a lawyer, but he doesn't have any ambition to be an author. So I think it's just you're attracting those lawyers around you that are the writers at heart. So I went to this conference, and I'm surrounded by these, and I was working on Eat Less Water at the time, and I am hearing different people say, "Oh, I'll write that book after my kids grow up," or I'm going to start to write my book once I retire, or I'm going to start to write when just fill in the blank. And then the woman who was the speaker for that event was Reina Grande, and I don't know if you know her, but she's written now I think 3 or 4 books, but at the time she was launching into her first book that has done really well. And she was at the time working 2 jobs, one as an ESL teacher and I can't remember the other job, and was a single mom, had 2 very little ones, and was working on her PhD or MFA or something at Santa Cruz, at UC Santa Cruz. So, and then here she was, she had finished her first book and was working on her second book. There was no excuses. She would stay up late after her kids went to sleep. So it is that saying it and sticking with it and just doing it, that action piece. So for me, with the last year that I was working on Eat Less Water, I actually, because I had little kids, The youngest now is 11, and the oldest is 18. I have 3 of them. But when I started, they were all little, like, 2 of them weren't even in school full time. So it was just kind of the time to work on it just, would increase as they would be away from school longer, or be away during the day longer. So I would then start to carve out time and stay at another writer, because I'm part of a writer's group. So I would go to another writer's house, which is in Ventura. So it didn't have to be a long production. Like, I didn't have to go to Big Sur, because I did that the first time and realized, wait, I'm spending 10 hours on the road. It doesn't have to be that kind of retreat. So I would just retreat to her spare bedroom once a month. I would show up on Friday and I would leave on Sunday, and I would tell myself that I'm not going to watch Netflix, and I'm not going to drink wine, nothing that was going to cause me to slow down, because I knew that was the focus. And if I was going to spend time away from my family and also have my husband take over, that the respect that I would give is to make sure that I was spending all of that time writing. And that's what I would do. And I just get through so much during that one weekend every month. So that was one of the things that worked for me.
Wow. All right. Yeah, that's dang. Taking it at sprints. Yeah, totally. You know what? Actually, I have to say everything I've written at a sprint has probably flowed a lot better. So yeah, my papers that were written at sprints. I think the 20-page paper in 12 hours was one of my best. All right, let's see. Yu-Han, what about you?
I think you're right that persistence is absolutely key. And I think it's a little bit easier to be a writer these days and have an audience and reach readers. And actually, you can make an influence on the world. You can educate people about water. You can educate people about, social justice, what's going on in certain communities, and safety of water, access to water, all of that. You have an opportunity. And I use my blog as that. And it kind of keeps me on track and reminds me that, okay, if you write something and post it, people will read it. And if you don't write something, then you're not doing anything. So I don't have as much time as I used to write, especially with COVID and everything going on. But I mean, there are 2 things. First of all, technology does make things easier. Back in the day, we used to have to print stuff out manually and have this, miserable little Stacey self-addressed stamped envelope. You put it in a big old middle envelope. You take it to the post office, spend $20 just shipping stuff out, and then you get this tiny, tiny piece of paper that's like the rejection slip. And it's just sad and difficult and demoralizing. But now you can just go on to one of those, Entropy or somewhere that tells you where you can submit, and just click send. And maybe you pay $5. It's not as bad as it used to be back in the day. Being a writer, submitting hard copy and waiting ages for that rejection slip, that's, really tiny. But also, I do want to point out that while things are easier these days, COVID does make things difficult. And all the authors here are... seems like also women. And I do want to point out that it's very tough being a woman these days, because they used to say, oh, well, women can do anything these days. And that's true, but they're kind of making us do everything too. Like back in the day, you had other people to help. Somebody might help you clean, somebody might help you cook, somebody might help mind your children, but now you're somehow supposed to do it all. You have to do the full-time job, you have to cook and clean, and probably breastfeed and make organic baby food that's pureed from, you made it from scratch. You have to be this super mom, super career woman, just be perfect at everything. It kind of makes it worse. So I do want to say that these days, especially with the pandemic going on, if you can survive, that's actually not asking too much. Like if you can just get by in your usual life and just live life, sometimes that's not asking too much. As long as we can get through this, you're living life one day at a time. And if you live to tell the tale, then these are unprecedented times. So it's impressive that we're all continuing on with our lives, with our children, with our writing, with our events, whatever you're doing. That the fact that you can still keep doing it and you're surviving, like even that's enough. Just surviving is enough these days, because so many people do not make it through and do not survive. So I think that counts for a lot. And also for women, I think we need to, and I need to work on this myself, is we need to accept help and ask for help when we need it, because we really don't have enough hours in the day to be able to do everything. If somebody offers their house to you, a spare bedroom for you to write, then you accept that. Somebody offers to mind your child for a little bit, you accept that. A colleague offers and says, oh, you want me to help you reposition your patient? Like, awesome, because we probably need 5 people. So if don't just take everything upon yourself, and don't feel guilty if you miss a day of writing. You know, it's there. It's still going to be there tomorrow, just as long as it's in the back of your mind and you keep at it. Don't feel guilty and just keep at it, I think.
Yeah, really. Amazing. Mia, I know you don't do it on the boat, so where do you do your writing?
Let's see, what do I do? I work probably from like 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. and then I also travel in the villages. Honestly, I know, Joan, you said you're not a morning person. I'm up at 4:30. And I usually will write, maybe like at least try to write like an hour. And my goal is do I just do it? I mean, it's not, I don't really try to attach anything to it on how good it is or not. I just do it. And then, yeah. And Yu-Han, you said, it's funny because everyone I know COVID's been really bad, but since I've been working from home, it's been the best thing ever for me.
Me too. Yeah.
I didn't realize how stressful it is just to go to work and be in meetings and stuff like that. And here I can really define my boundaries. But I think it's really just an introvert thing, and that's like, you know, that's just me. But I write mostly just in the mornings, and then yeah.
Well, I get an hour and a half more a day. I don't have to drive a half hour to work.
Yeah.
And I don't have to get dressed up. So it's been good.
Yeah, I love my pajamas. I'm not in them right now, but like I usually am. So, but yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Not having to commute has definitely been a silver lining. I will say that my ability to go through audiobooks really quickly has come down. I've swapped it out for doing dishes, but it's not the same as that commute every day. All right. Well, let's see. Next question would be, and I think maybe this one might be faster, maybe not. I think we sort of knew about this from you, Joan, but what came first? Desire to become an author, or the callings that found you to each of your individual professions? I know we've had some profession changes, but I guess, yeah.
Well, the definite desire to be an author came first. I mean, I remember Laura Ingalls Wilder and reading every single Nancy Drew book under the sun when I was a little kid. And I always knew I was going to write a book about my family. I never knew I was going to write the book I wrote about my family. So it was always there. I don't think I always honored it. You know, I think I liked having a roof out over my head and a car to drive, and I never did the poor kind of starving artist. You know, I never saw myself moving to New York and working, you know, for an agent or anything like that. There's this Joan, I haven't met her yet, but I live in Anchorage, Alaska, and, you know, I'm from Chicago, and I always thought, oh, what if that Chicago Joan moved to New York? What would she be doing? I kind of think she's got a really cool parallel life in another universe. But I always say I was a country mouse born in a city girl's body, so I went the other way. And with that, I kind of achieved my love very early on, which is to be in nature, and then I had to figure out a way to stay here. So I call it being an attorney in a trade. I grew up a blue collar girl, and to me, it's no different than being a plumber or an electrician. So it keeps me in the place I love, and then I can make my passion something that's not necessarily, you know, has it be income generating. Although that's certainly my hope. I certainly hope people buy my book. Half the royalties go to my brother, since it's, you know, his story and mine. But did I answer that question? I feel like I rambled.
No, I think you did.
Yeah.
I think you
Writer
answered
first, but like a roof over my head. So
yeah. Well, you know, that's why we all have second jobs, right?
Parallel
or other
universe.
jobs.
Joan is doing great. You know, she might be working at the New York Times. Who knows? I haven't met her yet, like I said.
Yeah, totally. All right. What about you, Yu-Han?
I've definitely always loved reading, even when I was little. It's just one way to be in a whole new universe and sometimes escape from real life, depending on what's going on. But I think I've always been compelled to write. And the more messed up my life is in real life, the more I want to write. It sounds like it doesn't make any sense, because when your life is messed up, how do you have time to write? But that's usually what happens to me. I think you end up writing through the trauma, and it helps. And I also used to be a teacher, so I think I've found a way to use writing as a vehicle to educate people about whatever it is that I happen to be passionate about, whether it's the environment or social justice or oppression or, public health. It's amazing, because I always tell people you can write your way into anything, or you have to write your way into everything. You write your way into jobs, you write your way into scholarships, into college. So writing is not just some boring, thesis sentence with a beginning and a conclusion that you learn in school or write for your teacher. Writing is everything in the world. It's how you communicate with the world, and it's how people learn things. It's how we use the internet to reach people these days. So I'm really passionate about that. And I feel really fortunate that, these days you can just publish an article about something online and you reach people and you feel like maybe you're making a difference. So I'm really grateful for that. And I just always felt compelled to write. I don't think I had a choice, actually. I could write it and leave it on my computer, or I could send it out, or I could, clean it up and put it on a blog or send it to a publisher. But I always had to write. It's how it helped me survive through all kinds of things.
Yeah, my goodness. Yeah, wow, excellent. I've definitely, there's sort of a maybe not so funny joke that I've never met a poet that had a happy childhood. Well, we don't, I think poetry comes out of what you're talking about. It comes out of the mess, right? Poetry doesn't necessarily come out of rainbows.
Well,
Maybe some poetry does.
At least the comedians are the most depressed people in the world. That's where it comes from.
Totally. Yeah. And dentists. Maybe that's why the guy was on hoverboard.
Dentist.
Yeah, really.
Second highest income, though, of all the professions, being a dentist.
Dentist.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound as depressing as I thought.
Yeah.
All right. What about
the things you learn about dentistry? Go ahead.
Yeah, really. Florencia, what about you?
Let's see. Joan, earlier you said how you think in words, right? Or
I love in words, or it's words have image. They're three-dimensional to me. It's maybe the way to say it.
Right, and I think when you talk to writers, kind of you can wake up and you have a word in your mind, and sometimes there are words that you don't even know what they mean, and then you just have to look them up. There's a lot of words that we think we know what they mean, but that we really don't know what they mean. But it gets you to think about where we all have different souls. I would imagine that the soul of a musician thinks in song, and the soul of an artist is thinking in that visual color and form, and the dancer. I think we all, or the mathematician, right, thinking in numbers. So I have always had the soul of a writer, even before I called myself that. So, and I would say before I was writing stories, I was writing journals. That's always been a consistent thing in my life, and it still is. It's something that I do almost on a daily basis. Even if I'm not writing any stories, I'll be journaling. I think it's always important to continue that muscle, practicing that muscle. But I would say that I didn't call myself a writer, bringing that conversation back, until I was in my 30s, even though I had already started writing stories, and even had started writing Eat Less Water, but did not call myself a writer yet until sometime in my 30s. So I know people who are in their 70s and have been writing poetry and have been writing all their life and have yet to call themselves a writer. So I think it's important to say those words out loud and to to be that. I mean, sometimes it starts as a whisper, I'm a writer. And you have to shout it, I'm a writer, you know, and like feel it, feel the power and the beauty and the honor that comes with it.
Yeah, imposter syndrome in writing and art and academia is so real, and I don't think people like you just get in there. We're all just figuring it out as we go. Nobody, right? Right. Like say sometimes when someone's getting really anxious about imposter syndrome, I'm like, yo, we all started out in diapers, you know, like we all just go up from there. Nobody knew how to do this from the start.
Right. There is no like measurement. I think that's probably it, because when you're, say, a lawyer or an engineer or a nurse, you get the paper that tells you are. Right.
Right. And it's on the wall.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Then you call yourself that.
Let's give each other diplomas. That'll be good.
Yeah, let's just put it on whatever we want to be. Just put it right on the wall.
That's just one act of being a writer. You know, not all writers need MFAs to publish, or you don't need to have a published book to be a writer.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, you don't need any kind of degree to be a writer or publish. We have lots of undegreed writers and authors. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What about you, Mia?
I think, well, okay. Well, before my dad died, I told him I wanted to be an artist. He was like, an artist, and I was like, yeah, I have a sticker book. So, but honestly, probably being an engineer came first, because I think I decided that like probably within a month after his death, and I was like 11. So I think I felt very responsible to try to, you know, take care of my mom and stuff. So, but you know, I think writing then just kind of was just my way of trying to understanding my world or whatever. So yeah, probably an engineer first, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't know. I see artistry and beauty of you choosing your father's profession to continue a relationship with him. That's what an artist does. So I think it might even be buried there in your engineering background.
You're probably right, because when I was in an interview, you know, they ask you like, what, you know, one of them was this, because I just recently got promoted, and they asked me what made me become an engineer, and I decided I'll tell them that and stuff. And then I realized, like, because I was on another interview panel with someone else, and he's like, I like Legos, and, you know, I like the design and things. And I'm like, yeah, man, I'm not good at math. So it was a very, definitely his answer was very more engineer. So, but it was kind of funny.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So, you know, we're at the end here. So just a piece of advice. What advice would you give an aspiring writer, right? Just been sitting here listening to all of you, has a really crazy life, doesn't know if they have the time or the energy or the inspiration to do this while working full time. What is your advice to that writer?
I would say what Florence has been saying. And I think you're going to pop on, but yeah, just keep on doing it and be like stubborn as hell. But that was what I would say.
Yeah. Thank you. Florencia, is that what you were going to say?
Exactly what I was going to say.
Perfect. All right, everyone, be stubborn. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what do you think? Yu-Han, Joan?
I was going to say, find your mission, find your why. You know, my why was a promise. After a lawsuit brought no admission of wrongdoing, I decided we were going to go get an admission of wrongdoing. So my why was rooted in love, and I didn't have a choice. Write from love, I guess, is what I can say.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yu-Han, what do you think?
I think definitely, I think we have a progression of first find what you want to write about and then persist. And I want to add to that at the end, get your stuff out there because nobody's going to see it if you don't send it out. You can share it on, you know, there's Instagram poetry. They make the people all pretty and everybody shares it and now you're famous. Or you could start a blog. You could send to publishers. You could send to literary journals. There's so many places for you to send stuff right now. And it's very easy to self-publish as well. There's really no excuse once you've written something to just sit on it anymore. If you're happy with it, if you're kind of happy with it, share it. Because if you don't send it out, we won't know that you're a writer probably. even if you're saying it, here's your proof. Just send your stuff out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my advice is always don't give up. If you're writing something you're passionate about, somebody out there will be passionate about reading it. And whether it's traditional publishing or hybrid or self-publishing or blogging, just like put it out there in whatever way works for you. Like there's best advice I've ever gotten was actually from an intern who was telling me that they, one intern was saying, oh, I just got 12 rejections. What am I going to do? And the other intern was like, 12 rejections? You got to get rejected at least 100 times before you've got any chance of publication. And I thought that was the best piece of advice. Just don't give up, right? Harry Potter was rejected 12 times. The Sympathizer was rejected 12 times before he's accepted for publication. So the next Pulitzer Prize winner is going to be, rejected 12 times before it gets published.
Can we say thank you to Red Hen for making us all published authors?
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank all of you. Thank all of you for bringing your incredible work to us. Obviously, we love it. We love working with all of you. So thank you so much. Yeah, we love all of you. Thank you all so much. I'm just going to close it out real fast. I'll see you in just a moment. Okay. Thank you all so much. Thank you to Yu-Han, Mia, Florencia, and Joan for joining us tonight, and for everyone who tuned in. This was a fascinating conversation, and I have learned a lot. You can buy the books of these incredible authors at the link in our chat and get 30% off your purchase with the code BEACHCULTURE, no spaces, in all caps. Thank you to the Annenberg Community Beach House and the Santa Monica Cultural Affairs for having us. We will see you next time. Farewell.